Hello. Friday Live feature continues. As you can see, I am still getting fuzzier by the week, and that's because I'm practicing more self isolation than recommended by the Swedish government. I'm feeling very wary. And so we have three kids who attend school, and my wife commutes to Stockholm. So therefore, it seems sensible that we sort of overdo it in terms of personal habits. We're already, expanded a little out into the contact zone more than I would like. Well, anyway, so far, so good as far as those things go. Oh, well, except for the appearance issue. Okay, so what are we doing? And in the effort to keep these things focused and brief ish, as far as me personally is concerned, which isn't always that brief, what are we doing? Going by the requests. So far, I've got three on the table. One is an ongoing desire to deal with cultural nuggets, historical things of interest that I can sort of combine pop culture and history and personal details into, which will be cool and fun. There's lots and lots of such things blogged about before or never got to. I might continue with that. Then there is a question about the Swedish gaming scene and doing role playing stuff here and what's that like, which is also fine. But today I'll go with something a little bit more logistic, a little bit less pop culture. Johan Strömberg asked if I could talk about working here in Sweden. I've been here just about coming up in a few days on 3 full years living here. And what's it mean to work here? And particularly in, the perspective of having lived in America all my life. And so I can talk about this in a couple of ways. The first thing you should know is that my wife is Swedish born, had never changed her citizenship, and had lived here, although not permanently, had lived here on and off, more or less annually through a great deal of her life. So, although residing in the United States for most of that life. So anyway, the point is when she said, well, I'm, a veterinary specialist and I will seek work in Sweden, she was already, internationally connected professionally through many countries and has her own, professional record and interactions and conference attending and, board testing, overseeing, and all that stuff is in place. So it's not like she wandered into a alien environment in any way. Basically, I guess you say these days, reaching out. She talked with veterinarians here, many of whom knew of her, and started looking for opportunities. And as you know, in many cases of this kind, at this end of professional work, and the same as it applies in academia, the reaching out actually tends to create the job. And that's pretty much what happened here. It took her, she got herself the license to work in Sweden first, and then started reaching around and talking to people and seeing, what does this, what the opportunities are. So that worked out really well. It wasn't too long, before it made a lot of sense for someone to offer her a job. To be clear, in her specialty, at last count, there are 3 people in Sweden with this veterinary specialty, which is fairly high demand. And she's one of them. So there you go. I mean, it was not too difficult, although it wasn't easy to get into the position to do it. And it relied on the fact that we're coming to Sweden, her country of origin, rather than some other place. There's a lot going on there with her ability to arrive with the job scheduled. I am a different story. I had left academia in 2014, 3 years before our move. And as far as I was concerned, that was a permanent departure. And just as I suspected, as I had observed for many decades in that biz, that once you depart, you're an unperson, very, very Maoist. Who? And so, no, you're not really going to get the kind of recommendations or the kind of, you in academia, pretty much every move is horizontal. If you go from place to place or do an elective move. And so therefore, that means it's known at both ends that you're going from there to there. And so the whole idea of dropping out and then re-entering from the bottom of the application process is a non-starter, especially if you don't want to do it, which I don't. So despite a certain amount of head scratching and investigation about, do I or don't I want to teach biology in Sweden, with no connections here, with no knowledge of the educational system, with no sense of place in it, and nobody wanting me, right? And the horizontality I'm talking about wasn't there. So this wasn't specific to Sweden. It has to do with any kind of job shift in academia. It's a very troublous thing. You don't relocate as an academic unless it is an institutionally arranged, desired, massaged, everybody's getting their kind of promotional resume boost out of you being there, stuff like that. So, and anyway, like I said, I was done with that whole thing. Just as an aside, one of the reasons that I feel very done is after giving my notice back at DePaul University those years ago, I embarked on my book contract with Oxford University Press to produce basically, the thing I wanted to say after all those years, which is this book. Oh, it's backwards, I think. That sucks. You guys are seeing me backwards. It's backwards. Anyway, it's called The Edge of Evolution and is a book I wrote, and it's published and all the rest of it, and I love it. And so I felt like from that perspective of something I wanted to say, I was done. Well, what do I do? I decided that I would work toward my strengths and see about this role-playing business. Now, that means that I'm starting up a small business in Sweden. And what does that mean? Okay, 2 or 3 things that are just going to rock the Americans sideways, drop their jaws, drop their butts to the floor even, which is that if you start up a small business, there are municipal services, state-funded municipal services, whose job is to get you off the ground, to the point where you can register to the downtown offices for a very, very nominal fee. You can be in this space with a kitchen and a whole bunch of open tables and little cubicles and stuff where you can go and work. And with increases in the amount of payment per month, and with given availability of space, you can actually get office space and locker space and stuff there. So effectively, you have a workplace if you want. And that's just a given. You're registered as a business, sign up. There you go. You got your office space. Nice people, nice staff, weekly get-togethers, Friday get-together for lunch, seminars available. It's surreal. You just sort of can have that done. There's also let's see. So that's it's associated with the office called the Nyföretagarcentrum, which is basically the new business center, which is to help you with startups. And they were really good. They helped me with my business registration, which is kind of bureaucratically nightmarish. And they helped me with access to these areas, which I used for a while. Turned out once I started filming and stuff like that, it works better to have a home office. So I've stopped doing that. But while I was getting going, it was actually really, really helpful. I met people, who are also starting up all these different small businesses, and that's kind of nice too. Nyföretagarcentrum also offered a special status, which ironically was called Adept, which is the name of my company, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, but that was a special program where you get a mentor and stuff like that. And I benefited a little bit from that too. So that too isn't in and of itself, that's for starting up your own businesses. Oh, and the state also provided a small monthly amount of money for the first 6 months. Right. You heard that correctly. So from an American perspective, I assume everybody out there is going, wait, what? Because there ain't nothing like that in the States. And so it's kind of amazing that it's standard here. Then there's this larger or more prevalent sort of a state office called Arbeidsfirmenlingen, which is a little trickier to figure out from an outside perspective. From a foreign perspective, you say, okay, well, this is job placement. You register there, and if there's some opening or something, they'll get in touch with you and see if anybody wants to hire you. And I'm thinking, okay. And you also register with them for starting up your own business because you've hired yourself. So, that's involved. You have, now that I think about it, I actually think that 6 month startup comes from them, not from Nifura Central. Well, anyway, so I registered with them, and I got a lot of help from them. And so I was thinking, oh, this is kind of cool. They helped me, register myself properly. My business is registered. Okay, things look good. Then you have to register your business with Skatteverket, the tax people, which actually I thought had been done and hadn't. And so that when I did my first taxes, they were like, who are you? And I was like, okay. But that was easy to fix. So back to that, though, Arbeidsfirmenlingen, I found that when I mentioned it to people here, I got this kind of weird vibe. People went, oh, yeah, them, or they're, oh, them, and I was like, wait a minute, what is that? I still haven't really figured it out, and I may be a little off book here for me to speculate, but I think it has something to do with crises or cultural problems, political concerns, and controversies over immigration. There's sort of this notion, maybe, that I'm picking up from some of my acquaintances. Well, Arbeidsfirmenlingen gives the jobs away to the immigrants, or something like that. There's some anti-immigration thing happening with that. And I've noticed, too, that as an American with a Swedish wife and a history of coming here and a sense of acceptance among a number of people who live here, they have a little hard time calling me an immigrant, which means something more negative to them. So that's with some of my acquaintances. And so for me to be working with that center is, it kind of tweaks them between the shoulder blades a little bit. So, okay, that's enough of that. And I've probably just got a whole bunch of people mad at me. So enough. But anyway, those are some things. You'll notice that I know nothing experientially about what you would ordinarily call getting a job. My wife is in this high-end, not really like luxury, but, kind of the really highly specialized, serious heavy hitter in veterinary medicine kind of stuff to do. And so any kind of employment or anything she would worry about anywhere is very much among people in the know about, who she is and what she does. And in my case, and that would be the case if I had stayed in academia for me, but in my case, it's pretty much the same as if I've got a lemonade stand. And so, this place is well supplied with social services about that. I've got a couple more things to say about that. But before I do, let's talk a little bit about what you think of as getting a job. You show up in town and you look around and you say, well, people need somebody to work at something. It's real different here in Sweden about that. There's very little, if any, what you would call unskilled labor. Because what is called unskilled labor in the United States here is taken seriously as a skill. And you may well have gone to, I guess we would, gymnasium is kind of the equivalent in the United States of high school first year college, kind of a degree that kind of gets you a little more further professionally than our high school does, and is often, it can be highly specialized. Some of them aren't, some of them are, but you could, for example, go for being a hairdresser, and that is, you go into a gymnasium which is highly specialized toward that whole industry, and you find something, management or the actual, design side, or, just focusing on the practicing part, but whatever. But, when you go and you work in a hair salon, you're educated in this. You've actually had, classes, not just in how to, but in what about, and you know what you're doing, and you know how the business works. So the idea of just like knowing how to do a thing and then looking around if anybody's going to just hire you for it, that doesn't really happen as much in Sweden. And so it's real, the idea that, you hit the pavement, looking for, you go to say, well, I need a job. I'll go around, maybe Subways are hiring. No, the people working in there, they really know what they're doing. They have degrees in this stuff. And that's the people at the counter who are like that. And they're not really very oriented toward, Joe Paycheck showing up saying, hey, can I have a paycheck? They're like, what the hell do you know about this? And you say, well, I can learn, right? And they're like, dude, we got graduates coming out of schools who really know what they're doing. And who are you again? It's not really a matter of being connected. You're just kind of out of the aquarium in terms of how these things are done and who gets these kinds of jobs and why they would want somebody who knows what they're doing. So, I can't say for sure that this applies to all of the basic jobs around. But it's much more prevalent here that that's the case than it is in the States, where it's that kind of thing is frankly absent, or very almost absent. And so that's a big difference. So I can't say that I know personally about how do I look for a job in Sweden of that kind, but I can tell you it's certainly not the same as, well, I'll just, drop off my resume at 50 places and see who bites. That's probably not the way it's going to go. All right. Well, one last thing I said, which has to kind of go back to the Nyföretagarcentrum and the programs there, and with the associated, although not exactly the same, service that puts up that office space and stuff like that. I'm going to be talking about the business advice in the seminars, and this is kind of weird. Okay. Also, maybe a little critical. Blast me, Swedes, blast me if you don't like it. That's cool. Which is this: there is a strain. I mean, we call Sweden, kind of a socialist place outside of Sweden. Technically, it's a social democracy, not a democratic socialism, but whatever. The point is that to an American, it seems far more social services oriented, and it is. But there's a very, very 80s startup, kind of almost messianic approach toward making money through being thrifty, industrious, and good at what you do. Very much the idea, well, if you're those things, then it's going to work out. And it's almost taken on a kind of, or at least in my experience with what I went to at these seminars, it sounds real old school to me in terms of this: you're going to self-actualize by starting up your own business, and you're going to bring yourself to the culture, and you're going to sell this great thing and provide this great service, and these people are going to respond, and you'll become more popular, and you will be self-expressing. It's this kind of weird mix of self-help and go-get-em startup that is real Reagan era. Right when I graduated from college in 1987, we were getting this sunshine blown up our asses, full speed, full intensity. And all of us at that age group, we knew what the finances were looking like. We knew we were looking at the true bank crashes all the rehearsals and foundational setup for what would be coming later, we were walking face first into that. We were looking at the changes in how credit worked. My age group knew what we were looking at, and we knew how screwed it was. And we were all very wary because everybody, 3 years older than us, 3 to 10 years older than us, had walked face first into all that sunshine self-help stuff. And we knew about that too. Some of us, we were struggled into being all into Herbalife and stuff like that, or did so out of desperation. And so we got to see some of us, fight with all that stuff too. So anyway, there's a certain amount of that here. If I may be terribly critical, there's an interesting blend of really solid social services, education, healthcare, lifestyle, expectations of your time, prioritizing, is the healthiness of that here is unbelievable. And yet it also seems mixed with this kind of petit bourgeois notion of thrifty, industrious, high quality, perky success. And then you'll be successful. And somehow this financial success and your psychological, self-esteem, your social, contributions, but also your social feedback. It all just goes together, right? It's this sunniness to it. And when I started hearing that at these seminars and stuff, I was like, okay, I know this stuff. I know about that. Yeah, right, everybody, pull the other one. And yet I see people who around me who are pretty much kind of buying into that. And so it's a little odd to see. Okay, so that is some of my thoughts on employment, labor, working here in Sweden. Incidentally, not doing as well as I would like because of Corona, because I had set up really successfully, way beyond what I'd planned, in terms of publishing, in terms of convention and activity, in terms of activity here in Norrköping, which I'll talk more about. All the role-playing stuff just boomed as of December last year. I mean, I was amazed. I was like, wow, 2020 is going to be pretty incredible. And it looked like it was, booming even more so by February. I was like, I gotta hustle to catch up with all this opportunity. It's way past my capacity to do this day to day. I have got to bust my ass now. Wham. All of that seems to have taken this huge hit. None of us really know what to do with any of it. And we're all kind of knocked sideways, locally, nationally. This small business and hobby oriented and very social and constructive approach to role playing here is really kind of reeling. And I myself am a bit reeling around in this regard. Hopefully, some of you out there will be interested in my Patreon and other activities. Champions Now, the books just arrived at the publisher and they're shipping them out. So that's cool. More to talk about that too, I guess. All right, long damn video. Sorry. Have a great week. Suggest topics, object, expand, all those things. Lots of comments this time. I'm lonely. Take care. Bye.